Welcome to this other side. Good evening and welcome to Press First. My name is Mijungu in for Mark Mursai, who is away for this week. Well, let's take a look at the highlights.
Thank you. I can get you, and like you have just asked, as we are talking now, we are just outside CID officers in Murang'a County.
Silver lining in Victor Kanuda's goofy story.
Kama ni mambo mbaya inaweza interfere with Kenyans, ikuwe hold, isionekane kwa social media ili raia wakae na amani, kwa sababu kusema Wakikuyu, wasichana Wakikuyu ni wabaya nini, hiyo inaleta ujamii, inaleta chuki kwa jamii.
And online profiling continues unabated in spite of strict laws. Right, welcome once more to the show, and we'll be putting that into context shortly, what you think of what has been happening online, not only in the story that has made your headlines in the last few weeks or few days, but several other stories. And my guests are in studio. We're still waiting for Rose Lukalo, who is a co-founder of Media Policy and Research Center. But I have with me in studio now Sylvia Muichuli, who is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Elea Africa. Is it Elea or Elea?
Elea.
Elea Africa. Thank you for coming. Douglas Okwach, who is a veteran journalist. We all know him. He's a regular at the show. Thanks, Douglas, for coming. And Dr. Joy Mweni, who is the head of Department, Communication and Multimedia Journalism at Riara University. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. Even before we take a look, or we speak to my guest this evening, let's take a look at some of your comments regarding online profiling.
Also, these status of people think now, because it's out there in the public domain, that Kikuyu women are murderers. I want to say that we have Kikuyu women, they are our friends, they are good people, and if somebody does something as one person, it will not be taken as a community as a whole.
Na watu kupost vitu mbaya kuhusu watu wengine, by the way, it's not good, inaharibu image ya mtu. This is cyberbullying bana. Social media hii, I think these ministers au ma MPs nafaa kai parliament waone vile wata sort this issue about social media, because social media has affect a lot of people. I think waeke kama mtu amepost kitu social media about someone, let that person should be arrested.
Nikiangalia vile wananchi wanatuma maneno katika social media, huu mtandao wa mtandao Facebook yote mention, naona imeweza kuwa vibaya, na naomba serikali kama inaweza kuregulate maneno ya social media.
Kama ni mambo mbaya inaweza interfere with Kenyans, ikuwe hold, isionekane kwa social media ili raia wakae na amani, kwa sababu kusema Wakikuyu, wasichana Wakikuyu ni wabaya nini, hiyo inaleta ujamii, inaleta chuki kwa jamii, na inafanya mtu anaogopa kuoa kutoka kwa kabila lingine, wanaona ni kama atauawa, na ni mtu mmoja individual amefanya makosa, sio jamii yote ilifanya hiyo makosa. So mimi naomba serikali kabisa wa regulate hiyo mambo kwa social media, wasiwache raia wakuwe na that freedom.
Na sio vizuri kuwa na tribal profiling ama community profiling. Ni vizuri tuwe regulated. Venye tunaongea at least tuwe regulated, maana binadamu hawezi kaa bila sheria. Binadamu akikaa bila sheria atageuka kuwa mnyama.
Naweka serikali at least wapatie muda, wapatie ruhusa ili waweke vitu wananchi wa kawaida wanaweza kusikia nini inatendeka. Lakini kuachiliwa hivyo, tuko hapa Kenya, tuko makabila wengi, tuko around 40 something, almost 50. Sasa tukiwachiliwa tu kila kabila iongee vile nataka, hii inaweza kuleta mfurugano vile ilikuwa mwaka wa 2007 ambapo skirmishes ilitoka mpaka watu wakakuja wakagawanya. Sio vizuri.
Right, very interesting views. We'll be talking about that. And Rose Lukalo now joins us in studio. Karibu sana. All right, join the conversation also online at Mijungu, at NTV Kenya, and at Press Pass. We'll be sharing some of your views during this show that begins right now. And of course, I want to have your perspective just on the Vox Pops in terms of how people have been profiled, people have been spoken about on social media. Before we talk about even the regulation, because we're going to dwell on that, but I've been a victim of that several times, not even once. So let me begin with you, Joy.
Well, it's very unfortunate, but that's what it is today. So the problem comes that everybody has their right to speech. Of course, that is also regulated because the laws are very clear. But when that goes out there, people feel that their image is damaged, and it's a whole society, it's a whole group of people, a whole lot of people who are being spoken ill about on behalf of one person. So that is very wrong to start off. So we have to get a way to stop that immediately.
All right. Yes. And just to remind you, we have a gag order this evening from the courts, and we can't in any way speak about the case of Tob Cohen and Sarah Wairimu. So we're not going to speak about that. This is a very general conversation. Yes, Okwad.
Thank you very much, Ken, for having me. I'm just surprised by NTV's selection of clips. All those speakers, the views are collected from one side of the debate. And I believe what we have watched, those people we have watched, what they are saying, they are reacting to some conversation that is going on.
Okay.
Why didn't we have that at the side of the conversation?
All right.
So that we get
probably there's no one who is supporting online bullying, if I may call it. Probably there's no one who would want to be bullied online. Everyone will be against it. But go ahead.
Yeah. So that's point number one. Point number two, I think this is about court of public opinion, and here there are usually no rules. There are no experts that preside over this court. There are emotions, basically. So people say what they say, they do what they do. And in the end, there are two sides sparring for superiority. At the end of the day, it's difficult to tell who's right and who's wrong.
Okay, that's it. All right. Okay. Let me hear from Sylvia. Before I even ask the question, your reaction on just what you have heard, Kenyans, the perspective of what's happening outside.
Yeah, I think we are reaching a point where we understand, yes, that while social media had its good side, there are some really negative sides to it. And I think it's now time for us to think about how to address the issue of cyberbullying. It is causing a very negative impact. It is ruining lives, ruining families, ruining businesses, and even making people commit suicide. Some of the high suicide rates we are hearing about as a result of cyberbullying. So as much as I'd like to agree with Kwach that it is really, it's very difficult to control, but the reality is that it's reaching a point where we have to have this hard conversation. Yes. How do we keep allowing this to go on? How do we keep allowing this to happen when it's actually impacting negatively on lives? So this is the big question in the room.
And even as we address that, you're thinking about the enabling laws and the laws that are supposed to be protecting people from online. Yes. Yes. Just to note that most of the people who speak online either do not know you or they're pseudo accounts, right? Yes. They're so well protected within their space and on the keyboard. Rose, your perspective.
Well, I mean, I have a split. I'm split.
Okay.
because I really don't think there's any way you can stop people from saying what they're going to say. But at the same time, I also think that, as Sylvia says, it's running out of control. And I think it's really an image of where the battle in Kenya begins. The stereotypes that we allow to run away with us, tribal, gender, regional, race, they're all playing out there. And then we say we're shocked when we see the violence within our society. So I think it's really time to reflect really deeply on this. I'm not sure that it'll be a simple legislative thing that can fix it, but really we need to look at our values. We really need to look at what we're putting emphasis on, because some of these things can fracture the country. Yes. I mean, we let them pass like that. They look like a simple comment on an event, but it's more, it's deeper, and it's becoming so deeply rooted in the society. It's cause for concern. It's
a cause for concern. Right, yeah. We'll come back to this discussion when we're discussing Victor Kinuthia's story. But before we go to that, let's talk about a story that has made rounds in the social media and has attracted a lot of attention. Parents and obviously the boys' age mates alike. And this is a video of a boy hurling insults at one of his classmates. It went viral on social media and it raised a lot of questions on the role of parenting in this digital age. Now, the boy who was vilified online posted another video apologizing to the public after the first video went online, also shedding light on how exposed the young people are on social media and how exposed they are to cyberbullying. NTV's Sharon Baranga reported on this story. Let's take a look.
Different social media platforms were awash with a video of a young boy who was evidently angry at one of his classmates and was hurling insults at her while threatening her at the same time. Parents at the school demanded that he be suspended. The boy, who was berated by social media users, posted another video apologizing for his conduct. The disturbing content raised eyebrows, with many questioning the role of parents in the digital age.
In such a scenario, I'm wondering who brought up the child, because it's a parent who trains the child on how to speak and which words to use. Parents have abandoned their duty of taking care of their children, so they have brought in gadgets to do that. That language is language found in films, so that is what he has been watching.
So what is the best way to handle such a case?
It's a matter of control. What is my child watching? What are they doing with the gadget that I have given them?
Psychologists say the reaction by a number of adults who came across that video is also wanting. Many online users who widely shared the video also hit out at the child over his foul words.
It is a matter of we grown-ups being a little bit responsible. When I see that, do I spread it? Because this is a child. After all is said and done, even if he has done what, it's still a child. And they need to be corrected in the right way.
In Germany, a group of children protested against their parents, saying they spent too much on their phones. The children complained they were not getting the attention they needed from their parents.
My word for parents is walk a journey with your child right from the beginning. It only takes a few years to bring up a child. Just a few years. Commitment for just a few years.
To stop cyberbullying, parents are advised to be supportive of their children as well as monitor their child's use of technology, as such attacks could scar a child and have a lasting impact. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
And as Douglas would say, the missing side of that story is we couldn't play it. I can't speak that language at my age. I can't speak it. I don't even know that language. But I bet everyone here has had an opportunity to review that video. So let me begin with Dr. Joy again. Where do we fail first as a society? And they've raised several concerns about the video. Majorly that caught my attention is why spread it? Because it's a child. And I'll ask the question at the end of this. Is the media also aiding this by spreading? Because now people who did not watch that video are going to go online and start looking for this video. So let me begin with you, Dr. Joe.
Well, first you're right, and the psychologist is also correct. Why were people spreading or passing over the message going round and round? And I think that comes from the ignorance of we, the citizenry, on the power of the media or the power of the social media. Even the boy himself accepts that he did not know how viral this story would go. He just thought it was, him talking to his classmates and all that. So the question then, I don't think the right question is to ask who's to blame, because really nobody's to blame. It's us as a society, myself, the children of this world, and even the teachers. It's all round. It's us as a people.
But where do you start apportioning the blame? You can't apportion the blame and the society at large. You have to start from somewhere. So where would you apportion it? Because the psychologist says the same thing, that it takes very few years to raise a child.
True.
Yes, exactly. So where would you begin apportioning?
Well, let's see. A child cannot raise themselves. They've got to be raised by somebody. So the question becomes, who raises children? It's the parents.
Okay.
In this case, we assume.
First point of contact with the children.
Yes,
okay.
That's the first point, that the parents have to take up their parental responsibility correctly and as important as it is. It's a very short duration, mostly 18, well, teen nowadays is going on all the way to 24 years. So let's work with the 24 years of their life. But when you're going through parenting, which people say is to parent, it's a verb, it's a doing, it's an action. It's not a lifelong process. It's what you do every single day. So for those 24 years when you're doing it, it looks like forever, but it's forever for this child. For you, it's a 24-year period, but it is a lot of work.
Okay, Douglas.
I think last week there were two videos. One of the videos that will remain very memorable for me is a video of two toddlers. I don't know whether they are toddlers or they are kids. I can't place their age.
Okay.
But one is black and one is white. And that video also went viral. So the black kid begins running towards the white kid. And then they meet and they hug. And then they seem to be tinkering with their phone. I think the white kid was holding a phone. Then one of the kids, I don't know whether it's the black one or the white one, breaks away and begins running away. Then the white kid, then the black kid follows him. I think it was a big lesson about hate at that age, and in the era where we have racial tensions across the world. Little kids do not seem to know what hate is about. Now, coming back to this video that also went viral, not particularly for very good reasons, one of the lessons that one can glean from that video is that this youngster, this young boy, learned these things from some environment. And for me, it's a fairly complex story because there's the use of gadgets, which means that kid has got access to gadgets. And there's also some level of sophistication in this kid, because I don't know who's shooting that video. I don't know whether it's this kid that has organized the shooting of that video. And that video has eventually ended up online. Now that kid is full of hate and anger. And he uses expletives that ordinarily in a household or at school or just in the village or on the streets are unacceptable coming from a kid of that age. So it's a big letdown on the environment in which this kid is being brought up, whether it's at home or at school or in the social circles in which this kid mingles with whoever is being brought up with. So it's a failure. And more importantly, for me, and this is really my own personal view, it's a reflection of our society. Because this is what you get to see around a lot. Whether it's on television, whether it's on the streets, whether it's on radio, this sort of culture is gaining ground and is threatening the very moral fabric of our society.
Okay. All right. Very interesting indeed. And just share with us your views. Hashtag that you'll use is press. We'd like to see what you have to say in terms of parenting, parenting in this digital age and where kids have access to everything. The parents have left probably the monitoring and the taking care of their kids to the schools and house helps and all. But let me hear from Sylvia.
Yeah, so first I want to say that this story really because I think that's like a preteen. That kid was a preteen. I don't even think he's a teenager yet.
Yeah, he looks between 10 and 13.
Yes, so he's really a baby in all the ways you can look at it. And it breaks my heart that a child that age can actually use the language that is. I'm a former English teacher, and I know it takes time to teach children vocabulary. So one of the things that I want to say... You
don't even know that language. Yeah, I don't know that language.
That language was... I know it's coming out of some American movies or something.
Yeah,
I don't
American
know.
Movies, music and all.
Some maybe gangster kind of, talk and all that. But I want to say two things that I noticed about this child that I would say, first we have to agree that all is not lost. This child can still be recovered if we make the effort. This child is crying out for help. So I think for us, the best thing is not to condemn him. The best thing is to think through how do we help this child to be able to fulfill what God purposed him to do on this earth. First, I want to say that this child is very brilliant. At that age, to be able to capture the things that he was talking about, it's really amazing. If you look at it now, as somebody who's listening to what he's saying, you will realize this child has a lot of potential. He's a very, very brilliant boy. The second thing that I noted was that he had the courage to say sorry. And this is something even in this country that very few people say sorry when they mess up.
But can you just imagine this child went and used the same media and apologized. So there is something really positive about this boy that we need to think about and figure out how we can take advantage of that. But I want to say, even having said that, as a mother, I feel that really this is a reflection of where we are as a society. How did this boy get access to those movies he was watching to a level where he could literally speak like those people? How did he get access to a phone at such a young age and be able to even arrange to shoot these videos and post them online? Where were his parents? Where were the people in society? Where were even his neighbors, the people who live with this kid? Did they realize that this kid was having a problem? The good news is at least we're talking about him now. So the thing that we need to do now is to think about how to take him into a positive space, how he can get supported. What I'm hoping and praying, and I'd like to talk to the school at Consolata, that the solution is not to kick him out of the school, suspend him and get him out. That's not the solution. What we need to do is really get to the root cause of this problem, address the issue. There are a number of issues he has raised relating to his classmates. All those issues need to be addressed, and there is no shame in doing this. Okay. People just need to focus and get some movement going.
All right. Yeah. Rose, definitely, you must have a say on this.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the lesson I'm pulling away from this is that we need to talk, really have in-depth talk about parenting in the digital age. And that too for the media, right? What does it mean? Because while we're looking at this child, I agree with Sylvia, we're looking at the future of Kenya. You know, it may be hidden from us now, but this is what is coming up. And even in our own lives, I recall a professor who held very libertarian views, a professor of journalism. And when he went on the internet for the first time, he said he had switched. He believes we need control, you know, for the first time in his life, you know. So it's not only the parents' problem, it's not only the school's problem, it's the environment we live in, it's the inundation with information from every angle. Are we going to take the technology away from the kids, and yet this is where life is playing out for them, you know? But if we're not taking it away, then how do we train them? What kind of training do they require in order to use these gadgets responsibly? To understand like we were talking about the boy not understanding how far this thing, the impact, the power of the media, you know? How do we train our kids to understand that these things are useful, but they have very far-reaching consequences? It's like training them not to touch the fire. It's like training them, you know, don't play with electricity, don't play with water. You could, you know, you can drown in it. You can wash in it, but you can drown in it, you know. So there's a whole new environment that needs to be unpackaged, and I think there's an important role for the media to bring out this discussion in a way that it has not so far. You know, what are the new rules? What are the new parameters? Who's responsible? What are the rules for parents and the technology tools itself, you know? Then now we can move to the control of the content, you know, which is a much more troublesome area.
Where, Rose, would you leave the notion that you cannot help me parent your own kid? Let me parent mine in my own way. Where do you leave it?
I think that's another area that we under-discuss, is the whole notion of our values as a society. So it's always one group fighting another group, and we never really reach a middle ground where we, you know, we agree these are basics, you know, tuheshimiane, this don't go beyond here in public, at least, you know, because I think there must be ground rules. The media itself relies on trying to assess what are the minimum standards for a society, but we also need to have that conversation ongoingly within the Kenyan society. Because there are people with very liberal views, you know, in the same society there are people with extremely conservative views. But when we talk about digital technology, it's coming to us whether you're liberal or you're conservative. It's not coming to us, it's here with us. It's the new way of life.
All right, we're taking a break, but I wanted to ask, and I don't have the minutes to ask this, but do you think it makes a difference what sparked this kind of reaction? Just a quick one. Anyone, do you think it makes a difference if you discuss what sparked it?
Yeah.
It doesn't?
It does.
It does. All right. Taking a short break. When we come back, I'd like to discuss this point from Cliff Ombeta, who is a criminal lawyer. He says the kid is the architect of the video clip that went viral. He posted it himself. He wanted to satisfy his ego and threaten at the same time. Most probably, it's been lacking that and crying out loud for it. In other words, Cliff is putting this right at the doorstep of this kid, right? He wanted it, he did it. I just like us to discuss that for obvious reason. But first, let's take a break. We'll be back on Press Pass. And remember, join the conversation. We'll be sampling what you have to say about this topic of discussion at Ken Mijungu. The hashtag, as always, is Press Pass at NTV Kenya. We're back in a moment.
Extraordinary could be right there in front of you, without you even knowing it. It's something unique, rich and rewarding, full of character, a bold expression of flavor like no other. Experience extraordinary. Guinness, made of more.
Cook at the stove.
Ni kama haiko.
What?
Kapatia mtu wa malimali, akatu exchange na pegs.
My mini-me on his new bike. #goals, #child support.
Feet is flying.
Watoa tax au upate nimeng'oa mlango. Nikasafisha kila kitu kwa keja.
Sipaida wewe na kutambua.
I need more money for Liam's upkeep. That 50,000 is not enough.
Yes, season 4.
When it comes to pimple care, Acne's Creamy Wash contains multiple vitamins and removes excessive oil and dirt. Use Mentholatum Acne's for clear and smooth skin every day.
Dr. Francis Atwoli and Kotu would like to invite you to the 42nd General Council of the Organization of Africa Trade Union Unity to be held at Sarova Stanley Hotel in Nairobi. The theme for the 5-day conference will be Ending Violence and Harassment at the World of Work. The conference will also be live on NTV, 17th of September 2019 at 10 a.m. From the heart of Nairobi to the sandy beaches of the Indian Ocean, coming soon.
Right, welcome back to Press Pass, and let's pick the discussion from this message that has been sent by Cliff Ombeta, because he says the kid is the architect of the clip going viral. That is the first part of his statement. Then he says he posted it himself, so he knew what he wanted to achieve. He wanted to satisfy his ego and threaten at the same time, which he indeed did. He's seeking attention. He has most probably been lacking that and crying loud for it. So he's saying perhaps the reaction, because this kid it's because of an insult from school, right? So he's insulted, and probably if you look at that insult, which I don't want to go into, it was relating to his personality and his relations, probably, the way he relates with people to school. So that is the reason why the girl told him what he told him. So it goes to seeking attention. That's probably why he's clinging, probably. Then it goes to what he says, and then he records the video and posts the video himself. So he's saying probably he was seeking for attention and he knew how to get it and he got it. Let me begin with the doctor again.
See, for me, it might not be seeking attention per se, but it's a child venting. Don't forget that this child is responding to an assault also. He was bullied on the grounds of being accused of being gay. So he's also venting out and saying, hey, you're calling me this. What about you? So he had to ventilate. And ideally, we should then ventilate to our parents, to our siblings, to our safe spaces. But this kid, from what we can tell, and please, we're not judging, it's just what we can tell, he had no one else to judge, to vent out to, other than the camera. And then when he did it to camera, he was talking to his classmates. Do not forget, he kept on saying, I don't know the names of the classmates, and saying this and this. So he had a space which he thought was his safe space to vent. But of course, it's the wrong space. And then now it's taken a whole different turn.
Did it expect it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wouldn't comment on Cliff Mbeta's opening statements in that comment. Probably he's talking in a manner that suggests that this could be one of his future clients. I wish him well there. But I'm more interested in his closing comments about seeking attention. Now, attention-seeking behavior is something that has been studied, is something that is known. It's something that we deal with on a daily basis, especially as parents and in parenting circles. The actions of this child, in my view, suggests not a knee-jerk reaction or something impromptu that just happened. It's got to do with this child's whole family environment, circle of friends, including the school environment. The school that is now, I don't know whether he's been expelled or not, that is now threatening to expel him for whatever reason. So indeed, I think if you look at parenting trends today and parenting trends of yesteryear, it is a whole world of difference. Things have changed in ways that are beyond comprehension, because I think in the traditional setup, a child was the property of the society. The uncle caned the child coming home, chasing the child towards home, and then the parents met the uncle and the child with canes also at the same time. Now, those are things that can't happen now, and the law protects children in very specific ways regarding that sort of treatment or discipline. So children tend to be left on their own, and endowed parents, parents with the ability to look after their children, think gadgets can look after children. I don't think they can. And parents spend many hours. Like now we are in studio. We are going, by the time we get home, it will be about midnight. We left home probably very early in the morning today, when kids were either asleep or they had gone their own way to school. So the time we spend with our children alone isn't enough.
Okay.
And even that time is not meaningfully spent. It's more again about gadgets. Each one of us, the child, the parents, on their gadgets, on television, on mobile phones. No conversation takes place at home anymore. And there is no opportunity at all, whether at home or in church or in other social setups, where people can sit with children and share a moment of good conversation on how people should, the things that people should prioritize in life. So kids are left on their own, parents are on their own, then these shocking things, then other roles, kids begin to play other roles, other players begin to get into the child's upbringing with all sorts of advice and instructions and expose children to all sorts of things.
Okay.
And then we have this sort of thing happening.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Sylvia.
Yeah, actually this scenario reminds me of an experience I had recently. I had gone for holiday in Mombasa, and we're having dinner, and there was this family of 9 that were sitting at a table, and for almost 2 hours, nobody talked to each other. Everybody was on their phone, and at a certain point, my daughter got up and went and asked them why they were not talking to each other, because she was kind of shocked. 9 people sitting, all of them on their phones. different ages of kids plus the parents. So this is the reality that we are facing. But I want to say that this situation is actually depicting the reality of what is going on in our school situations. There's a lot of bullying going on. And I believe this child was actually crying out for help. I agree with the last statement by Cliff. I'm not sure about the first ones, but the last statement that this child was crying out for. It's very, very possible that this child has been going through a bullying situation for many, many years. And there are different types of bullying. People think about cyberbullying, but kids in school go through physical bullying. They go through verbal bullying. There's all kinds of bullying that is going on in schools, and some of it is not so overt, so the teachers cannot know that it is going on. So the reality is that even within our school systems, we need to make them a little safer for our kids so that kids are not threatened when they're in school. This kid had serious anger issues, and those anger issues could be drawn from either situation at home or situation at school. It's very, very possible that at school he's been going through, since he was younger, some situations that were not, so good. So maybe he's blowing up now because of a series of activities. I'm not saying that we know much about him, but I'm just saying that we need to be cognizant of the fact that there's situations in our schools that are not very good. And the issue of bullying, unfortunately for the media, we only raise these issues when there's a sensational issue. Sometime last year, there was a big issue about bullying in one of the big schools.
Nairobi School.
In Nairobi School, and everybody was all over the place talking about bullying, and nobody, after that, it went quiet. Nobody's doing anything about it. So I think one of the things we need to be thinking about is how to make schools safer, how to deal with issues that children are facing in schools, and to avoid this kind of situation.
All right, and Rose, as you respond, Francis Mbugo has raised the same issue. He says moralists will always blame the society when such things happen, but I think this kid is crying out for help. It's a he, but he says she. He could be suffering loneliness, or he's been anxious. This is causing depression, leading to such outbursts. That's what Mbugo says.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think any time a child acts up, we should, and I'm trying to not focus so much on this child, because I think this child's story is the story of
so many others that haven't gone viral.
That haven't
exactly.
gone viral.
Yes.
That maybe don't have a phone or don't know how to use it or whatever. But this is the one that is that we're faced with today. And I just want to take up from what Sylvia was saying, because I think we've had a whole big discussion on revamping our education system. Yes. But at what point do we discuss the psychological and the spiritual and those other softer welfares of the child? We talk about parenting. The reality is that parents probably spend half the time teachers spend, with the children. Kids leave the house early in the morning, they're gone for 8 hours, they come back in the evening, spend maybe an hour or two, half of it goes to homework and getting ready for the next day, and then in the morning, you're getting ready. The same routine.
Yes.
So I think we cannot underplay. I mean, I've had this conversation with many teachers who strongly feel that their job is to impart knowledge and nothing else. There are also others who are concerned because of the restrictions that Douglas was talking about on disciplining kids. You discipline a kid, the parents are running there, they want to sue the schools.
Exactly.
So I mean, I think it's a big dilemma that we're sweeping under the carpet and failing to unpackage completely. And we had the opportunity, as we were discussing the revamping of curricula and school processes, but it's not too late. It's not too late to take it up.
All right. The question I'd want to ask, because now we're going to the aspect of the media and our role in this, and I recognize this. First, Ezekiel Mutua has been talking about this content that we should be putting on air and at wartime, right? Would it have made a difference? Just a quick answer, Rose. Would it have made a difference if this thing did not trend? If one or two people shared the video and it didn't trend, would it have made a difference? Or the media should have still been concerned and we should have taken this up? And secondly, the role of the media in terms of even the content we show, the music that we show on air, the fact that YouTube, there are even specific special bundles for accessing YouTube. And anyone who's 26 years and below has even more data, and they can access this so long as they're registered and their age falls below 26. So let's get into the role of the media in advancing this, in accelerating this, or just fueling it. Let me begin with.
No, I mean, we have to be careful about what we fuel, you know?
Yes.
I mean, I think...
but do you feel first that the media, by even showing it, by us even dwelling on that story, we are fueling this?
Yes, I mean, I think there are many ways we can tackle the same issue. And I think some of them are what we're discussing today. We have, you know, the failures of the media to keep certain issues alive. We watch bullying happen once, sensationalize, forget it, until the next child is bullied and acts up or something happens, you know? Why are we not engaging with issues on a continuous basis until solutions are found or until some sort of conclusion is reached, you know? Because if we leave it as it is today, in the state that it is, with a video that went viral, we've done nothing. The media may as well not exist for that child.
Okay.
I would like to quickly jump in there. It's just a question of who sets the agenda. Traditionally, the mainstream media was the one to set the agenda. But what is happening now is that the mainstream media is feeding off social media. So the question then comes, who constitutes the social media? Yeah. As we all know, it's, well, me and you, the urbanites, and we represent a very small portion of Kenya, so to speak. So then who is speaking for Kenya, really? Right. If the mainstream media cannot set the agenda, and we're talking about a developmental agenda that is there to build, yes, in public interest, of course, but also aware of the situation that we are in today. Social media is here to stay. So there's no way we can ignore it, but that does not mean it becomes the bread basket that when we are stuck, we don't have stories, social media. If you find a story on social media, you don't have to amplify it. Just come and unpack it, use something different. You don't have to now be, you know, copy-pasting from Twitter or Facebook, and then it's all here and everybody's wondering, now what is this? Instead of you setting the agenda, you're following what people who are not journalists are setting as the agenda, and that becomes a problem of, especially we media trainers, we train people, then they're not going to be absorbed in the mainstream media, because then you guys are taking guys from out there.
I think Winnie is raising a really important issue. It's not that we shouldn't cover what trends in the social media, but we need to pick the issues, digest the issues.
Did you watch the way we did this story, Mweni and Rose? Did you watch how we did it?
Yes, I did.
How do you think Sharon Baranga did that story? Even as you comment.
She's opened it.
Yes.
She's opened it.
She's only opened it.
But then the question
what's going to happen next?
That's the thing. That's the question. What next?
Yeah.
Because it's about fine. Today we are talking about it. Then what's the follow through? What policy? Remember, media is there to change policy.
Okay.
We want to inform policy. But if we just come here, yap, talk about it, and then nothing happens, what's the point?
If I may just jump in there, I think media by nature is, I'm sorry to say this, is reactionary.
Yeah. True.
Media is hardly proactive. So the point really is that, for me, it is a good thing that this video came out. And it's a good thing that it was trending. Because then, one of the issues you want to address as a journalist is so then, this story that you want us to do, what do we hinge it on? What do we hinge this story on? I mean, it's always been, it's a big problem that the media will never go out to proactively deal with an issue until a flashpoint, something happens. But then, which for me isn't a bad thing, but then once this thing happens, there should be some sort of sustained coverage of the issue, and see it to some sensibly
logical
conclusion, instead of just dropping it the next day. Today it's trending, it's a big story. The next day it's gone, like water.
Most likely we wake up and no one is talking about this story anymore.
And then we move on to other things.
Other stories, which are important. React in your one. React to other issues. Yes.
Actually, my big issue with the media right now is something that I will also say it's trending, and I think the media needs to really figure out how to get around this. And this is the rise of the social media influencer. And this social media influencer, if you actually analyze most of them, you will realize that they really do not have a journalistic background. So these are the people who are leading the conversations and leading the trends and making the stories that will be considered big or whatever, you know. And I think the media really needs to go back to the drawing board, because when I was practicing as a journalist, we had our own agenda. We woke up every morning and determined what we were going to do. So the mainstream media, as much as, yes, they say the donkey has bolted or the horse has bolted, they still need to find a way of reining in the horse. And figuring out how, for example, on this story, it is not about the boy. That's what people need to understand, that this story is not about one boy.
It's a tip of the iceberg.
It is a tip of the iceberg. So the media does not need to keep focusing on the boy.
Him, yes.
They need to focus on the issue.
How do we get it out? How do we get it out, if you were to get it out as a trainer?
Yeah, so there's two things I think that we need to be looking at. One is, as a society, we need to be thinking about how do we build media literacy, which means that even that boy would have known that if I use social media, these are the dangers of social media. And if I put this story out in social media, these are the ramifications. So media literacy, we should think about building media literacy at a very early age. In fact, I would say, within this new CBC curriculum, now that we have the window, let us get kids to understand what social media is about, what all this whole technology thing is about, and the dangers, and also the positive side of it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the media must now invest in retraining of their journalists so that they can understand how to deal with this new situation. It's also a shock to journalists, I guess, when you wake up in the morning, you're chasing a story, and the next thing, the story is already out on social media. So there needs to be some reconfiguring of how journalists do their business, how they go after stories, and most importantly, how they can become a little bit more analytical. Because people are feeding journalists crap, and the journalists are just picking it up.
You think we are picking and chasing it?
Yes.
Okay.
Someone is feeding you a lie, and they know they're feeding you a lie.
Is that about the influencers?
It starts, it's all over now.
I think the key challenge for me, Ken, for the media at this point in time is that it's like the media has no control of its operating environment.
Yes.
The media is like, the operating environment of the media is like a tectonic plate, which is shifting so rapidly that, and the media is working hard to catch up with it, but not doing enough. Because every day there's a new situation. Like I've just seen a report about new players that are about to cause another wave of disruption in the TV industry. Yeah, so every day there's a change, there's a shift. There's a change, there's a shift. So that the traditional media that Sylvia is talking about, that we saw as young journalists, is no longer what we witness. So it's grappling to keep abreast with situations that we have very little control about. And yet, these so-called influencers, if you look at the sort of following, there's a danger in even completely ignoring and shutting them out. You do that at your own risk.
At your own risk.
So there's a way the media must work around to accommodate even these so-called influencers.
But I don't think it's about shutting them out. Yeah. But I think, like, for example, the story that we're discussing, we've raised so many issues that come out, policy issues, school environment issues, parenting issues, technology issues, There's so many issues that need to be addressed. And it would take some journalistic skills to sit down, research the law, the policy, what allows this, the gaps, to engage these people and to give them voice. Because very much the tone, the voice in the media is very much captured. Actually, it's very captured. It's hostage. And it's hostage. Yeah. It's hostage, and there's so many Kenyans with views that could help.
You and I know, Rose, if we were to go that way, probably the story will not make it to the top 7.
Okay, put them in the headlines.
They will not make it to the headlines.
Put those influencers in the headlines and move on to the real issue.
All right, time now for another break. When we come back, I'd like to discuss the silver. You seem to still want to discuss this. Yeah, you still want to discuss this, the role of the media? Yes, but okay, we'll come and discuss that. Plus the silver lining in Victor Kanuda's story. You all know the story by now, right? And the position that the trainers have in our lives as journalists. But even as we take the break, here's a tweet from Alex Owiti. He's a regular, he watches this religiously. He says, the media plays a critical role in informing the public about the aims of the society. The media also advances the agenda-setting role. The conversation we are currently having is as a result of setting the agenda about the issues affecting the society. I think you'll all agree. Yes. But it's because it's a reaction to Mugendi Clay's tweet that is wondering why we're discussing this. He wondered why we are giving this a lot of discussion, a lot of airtime. But time for a break, we'll be right back. And when we come back, my guests still have a lot to talk about, including not only Victor, but there are a lot of things that happened in the last week, including the story of the Spy Queen, how we reported it then, and how we came to report. Did we even know who we were reporting about then? That now changes the whole story, right? Let's take a break. We'll be back.
Go get the stove.
Ni kama haiko.
What?
Kapatia mtu wa malimali akatu exchange na pegs.
My mini-me on his new bike. #goals. #child support.
Feet is flying.
Wewe toa tax au upate nimeng'oa mlango. Nikasafisha kila kitu kwa keja.
Sipaida wewe na kutambua.
I need more money for Liam's upkeep. That 50,000 is not enough.
Yes. Season 4.
When it comes to pimple care, Acne's Creamy Wash contains multiple vitamins and removes excessive oil and dirt. Use mentholatum Acne's for clear and smooth skin every day.
Have been on the forefront for corruption.
And that's a good place to begin.
A lot of this corruption happens because private sector and government are in bed together.
We've had this talk many times.
How drastic should the measures be taken? Because we can't keep on talking.
We don't see any action. The president has the ability to actually fire people.
I like to ask a direct question for direct answers. The heart of humanity, how do you still have it when you're such a hardened soldier?
This is not about you, it's not about your life. It's about the country that I serve.
This is where the real conversation happens.
My name is Joyce Njogu. I'm the head of consulting at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. It's a business membership organization for manufacturing value-add industries with close to 1,000 members. From Daily Nation, we've been able to build our brand as CAM. We've been able to build the credibility of CAM because the more you communicate through the Daily Nation, the more we have partners wanting to engage with us and be part of the development agenda.
Our leadership isn't challenged, and that's the truth. Daily Nation, the truth.
Wake up to nothing but the best in news, conversation starters, and hard-hitting interviews that keep you informed for the day ahead.
Up and early, 6 on the nose, these people don't sleep. Fix first the data protection law, then we come up with the number. Exactly my question to CS Joe Mushero.
Welcome to Living with Us. I'm your host, Shai Mundia. Boy, have you missed out.
Stop your wheel, game done.
Thank you for joining us on NTV today.
We have our reporters in different locations.
NTV is right here to bring you everything from the beginning to the end.
Hii ni NTV Sasa.
Kuna mambo mengi sana ambayo yanafanyika.
Sasa ni kumtuliza. Hii inaitwa sensory integration.
Shughuli pevu ya kudunda viwanjani narejea kwake
na kurudisha hapa studioni.
Kuna mengi ambayo yanaendelea kujiri katika maeneo tofauti.
Tunavyoelewa nasema nini? Vimeundwa.
NTV in the morning. All you need to know to start your day.
Right, welcome back. And I want to begin with this tweet from Muganda Clay. He says he's still wondering or trying to understand why this kid is being discussed on Press Bus. And we're not discussing the kid per se. When did this program become about parenting? And are the panelists, that's me included right here, the perfect parents? That's what he's asking. We've spent over half an hour discussing this case. I think Muganda is looking for attention too. That's what I think. He's looking for attention too from Press Bus. You've gotten your attention, but it's very important. Douglas, you want to weigh in the role of the media in this?
Yeah, I think Rose was raising the issue of influencers, and I think the media is struggling to find a middle way. I don't know how to put it. You know, to bring in both the old and the young, and the role of the influencers is very critical in driving sales, whether it's print, whether it's ratings, and so on and so forth. And I think there's now, it seems to me like there's a tendency to lean more towards the younger people and abandon traditional principles of journalism. And I've seen that even in the way we write headlines. Like for some time I was confused by Nation's headline in the week about spy queen. What is a spy queen? And then it turns out the idea is to get a more salacious, you know, sizzling, you know, tabloidish, you know, sort of, and you can almost guess what segment of the readership they want to appeal to. But this is also equally annoying to the more established, you know, older school, you know, readership. So they are struggling to get a straddle to find a middle ground where they can serve both sides. But in the process, I think very important principles of journalism are being sacrificed. This person that was the subject of this headline, it turns out is somebody of questionable character.
Yes.
And has been covered very positively by the media over a period of time. So the question really for me is whether media for all this time knew exactly who they were covering, or it suddenly dawned on them that, oh, so for all this time we've actually been covering an imposter, not a police officer. Because there's no way a police officer who is serving the government and is employed by the government can one day be an imposter, another day is a police officer. They can't be two persons at the same time. So I think we need to treat with care in this act of trying to balance and bring in all cadres of readers or viewers into our media.
All right, unless,
Yeah, maybe one small comment,
Yes.
Ken. I think one of the things that we must admit is that the mainstream media was kind of caught napping by the social media revolution. So in a way, the mainstream media is playing catch up. So you'll find that most of the media houses' digital teams are not, strong enough to be able to sort of deal with what the social media influencers are dealing with. So my take is that media houses must now invest in their own teams. So that, of course, it will take time, but it will definitely be a worthwhile investment because you're investing in people who are trained in journalism, who understand news values, they understand what exactly makes news. And if you invest in these digital teams to be able to also get their own following and really build up their capacities, then with time, you'll be able to mitigate the challenge that we're talking about in terms of what's happening in the digital space.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's switch gears now, and I begin with Rose. You saw what happened when they were arresting Ndindi Nyoro, the MP, and Citizen Television, in a bid to break the news, as always, that's what we do, business of news. We had a camera, but we didn't have a reporter. Threw in the deep end one of the reporters, Victor Kanuda, whose story, by the way, has now transformed and he has even more opportunities. But even as we were talking about cyberbullying, we saw what happened. Victor trended for almost 2 days, and people poked holes, said all manner of things about him.
Right.
Now, talk to us as a trainer now, looking and reflecting on what happened to him and what continues to happen, and in the bid to get the news out there, how far the media houses go.
Yeah, speaking for Victor, I think he did a great job as a first-timer, and he really stuck to the facts. He didn't try to embellish, he didn't try to look good, he stuck to the information he had, which is what a good journalist is trained to do. I think the error and the risk, it was a big risk actually to do that, because this may have been a safe story, a reasonably safe story, but you never know what an untrained person will do on air, untested, and there can be repercussions for a media house, So it's not that, while I commend he held his ground, forgive him for how he looked while he tried to cover up the space, but I think the media house took a very big risk. And it's not something that I would recommend that anybody does. Then again, he was the only one on the ground. You have to weigh, I guess you have to weigh the situation in the moment. I wasn't the editor in the moment on the ground, so I won't say that I'm laying down a rule or something, but they're very big risks. He could have said anything, he could have slipped, he could have, created a mess that would take weeks to recover from.
Okay, but it's good even the way they stood by him. So, Sylvia, what you're saying is sometimes English minging a catwalk doesn't matter, the substance matters most.
And I can tell you what, having been a journalist, I want to tell you that the first days as a journalist, you make crazy mistakes. So, unfortunately for Victor, his mistakes were right in front of the camera. But for all of us who've worked in newsrooms, you make some goof or other. I remember when I did my first riot story, and I was the first lady to cover a riot. And Mutegi who was then the
Muteginja,
who was the news editor.
Yes.
He tasked Eric Shimoli to be my policeman. He was like, Eric, wherever she goes, you have to go with her. And he kept, before I left the newsroom, he kept telling me, you stay behind the policeman. Don't go anywhere near the bullets or anything. I can tell you what, it's always a risk putting out somebody out there for the first time. And I would like to appreciate the editors at Citizen, because they have done what the old-time editors used to do, which is really help your person to get off the ground. Victor is going to have a great career, I promise you that. And the reason why he's going to have a great career is because his editors believed in him. Those who are laughing him at him on social media, let them give him,
let them try and
give him 2 years time, and they won't believe.
I have done this for 11 years.
Yes.
11 years, and I have to admit, every time I sit in studio, I get nervous. I see the cameras and the lights, I get nervous. Every time I do this, so I don't blame him at all, and I understand it fully. Yes.
I think Victor's story opens up a whole segment in television journalism and how it has changed. And I think television journalism has changed progressively for many years, since, say, the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Yes.
When readers preferred to see the rolling images of the assassination, and then the quick shooting of his assassinator. Television has changed. Look at 9/11 and what people expect from television. So it's easier for editors to, it's the new normal, to send a reporter and a camera to a situation. Usually it requires a lot of training, because I do this sort of stuff with reporters, including very experienced anchors, more experienced than Ken Mijungu here. But they still have to rehearse. Yes. You see, the camera can be rolling and you are seeing the images, but it has to be accompanied by some sort of narration. Yes. And I think the assumption is that words are the tools of trade of a journalist, whether it's written or spoken. So there should be no problem. Yes. I think that's a misconception.
Yes.
So people must be trained. And I think in studio, people like Ken or the anchors or hosts of shows like this benefit from that thing we call the teleprompter. So which actually makes them look very good. Now the journalist on the field has no benefit.
Yes, exactly.
Although now, I think we are beginning to use teleprompters even on the field.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think with the benefit of technology, which Victor didn't have, he could equally just have looked as good. So for me, it's a good thing that it happened. It awakens up to the realization that we still need to do a lot insofar as training is concerned.
Yes.
And that is not just about sending a camera, which is the new normal, and have those images rolling. And actually, if you analyze for content, what reporters say on a live scene, it's usually a lot of yapping. There isn't much substance if you filter it really. If you filter it really.
Yes.
So what happened to Victor for me is not something totally out of the normal.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just that we do not take a lot of attention trying to analyze. So what does this say? You know, like on this panel, some of us can just be exceptional with words, but we are basically not saying
anything. Yes.
Yeah.
English mingi.
Yeah, English mingi. Yeah. So I think it's a good thing, but it awakens us up to the need for training, which I'm happy, and we should congratulate Citizen TV for this, for quickly responding to the situation.
Traditionally, what will happen? You mess that bad. What will happen? You'll be taken off.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
From reporting.
Of course. Yeah, and you can plead. You can
say
make
anything,
an excuse,
but
a
then give that
technical
opportunity
hitch.
to someone else.
We have a problem, and the idea really is just to take the journalists off the air.
Yeah. But I think traditionally, actually, even they wouldn't put somebody green on camera. They would not traditionally. But as Sylvia and Douglas have said, you know, the times have changed. You know, it's a new,
and also
to
jump on there, Rose, I think there's now more movement towards just sending one journalist.
Yes.
You see, like, give us the images, give us the sound, give us the voice, give us, you know, a journalist, one journalist doing like everything. Where we used to have a contingent.
Yes. A producer, a reporter, a writer,
just one.
everything.
So we must begin getting used to the idea that one journalist can actually be thrown at that deep end and deliver. Because that's where we are going.
It's true.
I feel like I can jump in there from a trainer's point of view. Like our program at Triara, we do not have anything called a specialization. By the time you come in and graduate, you should be competent in everything. You should be competent in editing, in reporting, in all aspects of news, both in print and both in electronic, in broadcast, because that is what the converged journalism is today. Right. So that's what we're trying to prepare. But we also have to give room for the creativity of the person. So whereas we can give you 80%, there's the 20% that the person has to
do.
Has to
Actually,
get
I think
for
you
themselves.
give 20, 80% you learn it practically. Practically.
That's the thing.
I think
So
it's
where
about
these opportunities to keep practicing? Like, well, you could have your own shows, like we are very strong on YouTube and all that, but then, even then, it is not a live scene. It is still, they'll do the
Recorded,
work, we'll have to record, we'll edit, we have time to tell them, now go take 10, take 20, but this guy was thrown right there. There was no edit, there was no delay, it's there.
Did he deliver the message?
He did.
Forget about the language.
He did.
Did you get what was happening?
100%.
Is that not what is important?
It is. It is.
Yeah, that's what is important. Unless I need to move on, we have a few minutes. Unless you have something pressing on that, but let's discuss how we've been reporting some of the stories that also hit the headlines in the last few weeks or so. Let's go back to Jane Mungo, the spy. Douglas alluded to it. We reported about this lady, gave her all fluffy, nice names, right? Yes. And then it turns out, at the end of it, that she's actually what she is, right? She was discredited with every means possible to the authorities. That's one. There's also a story of my friend Shienze that was reported. Yes. There was even fundraising and all. And the media, it was even done by the BBC, if I'm not wrong. And then at the end of the day, it turns the way it turned. Just your views on, one, because you mentioned it, follow-ups, and secondly, our selection of stories and the fact that we don't dig deep, or we dig deep and we don't get it. And lastly, the example that my director has given me is a story that Pamela Sigi, who's my editor here, did about 2 weeks or a week ago on the follow-up on Loliondo Wanda that John Allan Namu did. You remember Loliondo Wanda?
Yes.
And then 9 years later, Pamela Sigi decides, you know what?
Yes,
let's do the ghosts of Loliondo. And look at the kind of story. It took 9 years to follow up that story.
Yes.
That's our character. Let me begin.
Sadly, on this one, I don't think we can squarely blame the media. There's a level of the society, we the people. When I come to you, I'm speaking to you on trust that you're going to tell me the truth. Because when I'm coming to talk to you as a news source, it's not exactly an investigative piece where I feel I have to now start asking you, if you say your name is Ken, please, ID.
Verify ID.
ID. You know, when I start doing that, as a journalist, I'll never get any story. So it's a trust issue. So it goes back to society. Unless as a society we can decide who we are, our moral fabric, then I don't think journalists are going to get away from this. So I don't squarely blame the media. Nonetheless, we have our role. We have to verify. But again, it's not an investigative piece. This is just, what's your name? I mean, I've come to you on simple research. Okay, if there is any term like simple research, it's what I have, the basics. So the rest is for you to carry the story. Now, would I have started going for where's your good conduct? And anyway, you did that story today. The person I am today is not the person I'll be tomorrow. There's no guarantee that tomorrow I'll not be a thief. There's none. So you also have to not absolve yourself of the blame, but at least take a bit of it and say, partly to blame, yes, partly not to, yes, or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
No. Ken, on stories generally, I just wonder what happened to the good old pitch. So the story of this police imposter aside, and the sad thing about this police imposter story is it's not the first time. The media has been caught in this kind of situation many times, not just once, not twice, not thrice. I think there's a long list of situations where media has goofed in terms of people they have treated the way they have treated. But I'm just wondering, in terms broadly of how we source our stories, I think there are traditional ways, well established, well known, about institutions that serve us with news, whether it's government, whether it's state corporations, whether it's whatever. But whatever story we are pursuing, I think at some level these stories must be discussed. And one of the things that you want to raise in a pitch is that, okay, this story looks interesting. How easy or how hard is it to do? How quickly can you do it? How slowly? How long will it take? Who are you going to interview for this story? How are you going to access them? what value are they bringing into this story? So ordinarily, it should not raise a situation where the media finds itself talking to the wrong people, because the pitch, whatever is in the docket, if it is the newspaper, has been interrogated in a meeting of editors that, oh, I see this story has come from Kisumu or Mombasa. Exactly what is it about? So there's a discussion around that story, including who and what it is about. But I think a situation is happening here where people either turn up in a newsroom or journalists meet them in some sort of places and a conversation begins and a story develops. I've seen obvious stories of media being misled, including of people who are known conmen posing as philanthropists, and the media repeatedly publishing these stories.
Even the people we call businessmen.
Yes, yeah,
businessmen. Businessmen.
Yes, yes. So how does this happen? I think a lot of times, and I want to differ with Joy here a little, that sometimes it's journalists' error, the long bait and sink and hook and sink that has been swallowed along the line. But the temptation or the problem was introduced by an individual journalist without editors along the line interrogating. So exactly who's this? It may not be the ordinary thing to do if I send a journalist on a crime in alleys and sell stories, which we come and blow up. Yes. And then along the way, we begin to say, hey, what went wrong? I think we must take the blame for that. Okay. We need to interrogate more closely our sources, our stories, and so on.
Yeah, and linked to this is the issue of how the media determines which stories are going to be headlines and which ones are not. I'm going to use a specific example, and there's a story about NYS. The story about NYS, if you noted the coverage, and I hope somebody is going to do some analysis of how the coverage was done. For almost 30 days, they had the picture of Lila Nomolo on the front pages. Front pages of NYS story, yeah? Come the story of the dams, the 2 dams. This was a much bigger story, much more money, we are talking about billions and billions of shillings. That story ran for a week and it died. So I think there's also an issue about how fair we are in terms of how we pick certain stories and decide to make them amplify them, and how we decide certain big stories will just be run for a few days and then they will die. So I think there's a big issue there with how the choice of these stories. I was actually watching that story with a lot of interest and wondering why that story. I know it was a big story, but why is it other corruption stories in Kenya have not been given the same kind of prominence and visibility? I think there's a story behind that, and I think this is what we're talking about, that the media decides certain things it's going to amplify, certain people it's going to build up their careers. They just pick a nobody, they start building the career, they build the career, and the next thing this person is being called prominent, this prominent, that. The next thing this person is getting an elective position or whatever, So there is some bias in the way the journalists are making their decisions on picking up stories, and I think this needs to be dealt with as well.
Okay.
It's true. One of the main roles of also media is the status conferral, that it confers status to certain people. So yes, you're right in saying that, of course, we should look at who it is that you're giving that status to. But again, the pressing nature of news, I guess, in fact today, in the 24-hour news cycle, it's even more pressing on how we'll even get to interrogate these sources that we have.
Yes.
So maybe even, of course, the downsides of the media does not help either, or of the media workers, it does not help either. But at the end of the day, why can't I trust you to tell me the truth?
I don't think that the media never operates like that. I don't know. I mean, I think the first thing that I would train a journalist is don't trust anyone.
Don't trust the news. There's always 3 sides. The source side, my side, and obviously the other side. But you realize this 3rd side was just introduced the other day.
Yes.
You taught us to say both sides, balance it. Or question say, balance it. But now we are increasingly trying to get the 3rd side, which is my side.
Right. Yes. And I mean, I think it's a cardinal rule. Not even when you know the person, you ask, why are they telling me this?
Yes.
Even when they're credible, why are they telling me this? Because vendettas are fought in the media, and the media can lend itself to misuse. But One sympathy I have for the media is that 24-hour cycle, and I think that there's a hurry to get things out.
Yes.
But I think it's important now to begin to reflect and, as you say, to understand that there's some stories can wait.
Yes.
That not all stories are breaking stories, you know? Some stories need that reflection, that, you know, interrogation. And I think the story of the Spy Queen was one, you know? I mean, what was the hurry? It wasn't like a breaking
news. It wasn't one story, it was a series of stories.
It was a series of stories, yes.
So something else went on there.
Yeah, something else went on.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there was ample time. And especially when somebody, like you say, walks off the street and comes into the newsroom, you have to ask 100 questions, you know, and get, you know, interrogate who the person is, their credentials and everything, you know.
Is the training that the veteran journalists, perhaps I will ask here, underwent before they started practicing, looking at what's happening currently, is it the same? Do we get the same value like you got? Is it different?
I think what's missing for me, when I speak to a lot of younger journalists, is the older journalists. There used to be a layer of older journalists who would pinch your ears if you got it wrong. They would sort you out, you know.
They're straightening
so
you
the
up.
mentoring, so it goes beyond just the training, the academic training. There's the mentoring, the internal mentoring that is so important, and the institutional memory of stories and you know, people who've already been burnt. You know, they've been burnt, they've been through this, like Sylvia says, you know, you've broken your teeth, you've made your mistakes, you know where the problems are. I mean, who I value so much, I won't mention because there are too many, but they were ahead of me. And, you know, learning also becomes much faster. You know, it's an accelerated learning process. The minute you step into the newsroom, when you have people who've been through it, you know, rather than when there's less experience in the body.
But are we even receptive of that guidance? I'll give you an example. Nowadays, how newsrooms operate, the current newsrooms, you get an editor as young as 27 because they did well in what they were given, the point here and there, they have to be retained, so they're promoted and the name editor added, right? These are not so grounded and not so well qualified. Do you think that contributes? Because newsrooms across the country have that. I know you've seen them. And then traditionally, you not have an editor, probably they will be 35, 40 years old. But now you have them very young because they needed to have been promoted. They need to justify the additional salary, for example.
I think we can borrow from practices by international media. And it's something very obvious, and we see it on a daily basis. The caliber of journalists, you know, the person CNN sends to Iraq, or Al Jazeera, Mohammed Ado, for example, and you look at the amount of experience that journalist and the grounding he has, and you see this whole thing Victor was struggling about. Just give Mohammed Ado a few seconds that I want you to. We are on air, Sudan, riots. He will give you a complete picture. Context,
current
including the actual
everything.
of the whole story. So I think it's not too late, and the rush to really make upcoming and promising journalists into editors is unnecessary. There's a way you can retain these journalists and keep them doing what they are best at doing, instead of promoting them and putting them on the desk, and in the process actually killing their entire career. I mean, we can think of more creative ways of keeping these journalists going. If it's a talk show, a person like Larry King sat on that chair for I do not know how many years.
Probably 4 decades.
And he has, there is no other Larry King.
You can.
He has a very unique way of interviewing. And makes people bring out what ordinarily no other person
will get out.
So why don't you just keep him as Larry King, the talk show host?
Why do you have to do something?
So this rush has done more harm than good. So that's point number one. Number two, I think the mentorship is also dead. Because probably there are fewer, more experienced journalists in newsrooms now, and they are the more younger lot. And now that at NMG here, I know what it takes to leave a sub-editor in the newspaper in charge of a page. For an editor to go home and leave a sub in charge, it will have taken 5 years or more or probably 3, if less, after that journalist left Mweni's lecture room.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a question of people coming from the university and
speed
being,
over.
it takes a lot of in-house training for them to get the grip of what exactly is expected of them.
And even as you give that example, what clicks in my mind, because I worked with him, is, for example, Jeff Koinange. I worked with him at K24 for 4 years. Never gotten a position of an editor, but see, he thrives, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And he has the experience and all.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I see the error even before you speak. I see the mistake we do with what you're telling me here, with the lives. You throw a reporter who's very green, and that's exactly what happens, because you don't have the background, you don't know the complete story. So you say, I am here, and Nyoro has been arrested, as an example, and then you don't even know the context, arrested for what. So it's a difficulty.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I just want to say, as a matter of a joke, I think one of the best reporters, journalists I ever worked with in the field, going out to look for stories, is Emmanuel Juma. Emmanuel Juma used to do features that would make you cry. You know, he would go out there. I remember one feature we did in Budalangi when the floods were there, and he was reporting right there in the middle of the floods. You know, so it's true. This idea of promoting people, making them editors, and then they get away from what they do best is really a shame. And I think we need to find a way around that. I think there should be a way of progressing in your career, even as you progress as a reporter, and let the guys who want to do admin. I think we should think about that.
Okay.
But I want to say one of the things that where the rains have begun to beat us is when we stopped focusing on good quality stories and started competing with these social media people. I think there's a place for that, and there's a place for grounding yourself in coming up with good quality material. And there are newspapers around the world that are actually thriving on the fact that they do good reporting, they have stuck on good reporting, and they do not compromise. So I think our mainstream media here also needs to decide that we are not going to go after the social media guys. We are going to stick to good quality reporting. We're going to invest in good stories, which means that if you're doing an investigative piece, you're actually putting in serious money to make sure you do a good job, rather than trying to pull it out as fast as you can because you want to compete.
I think Sylvia is making a very good point here, and I'd like to just go back to that BBC second wave of disruption on television that they were talking about, and BBC is saying it doesn't shake them one bit, because people will come to us because of ethical considerations.
Exactly.
It means that even in this murky, convoluted environment of the media, you can still stand out for something unique. Maybe just your reliability, that this publication or this TV station never, in the era of fake news, will never
get fake news out.
Fake news out.
Okay.
That alone, in spite of the competition and the madness around this environment, you can still make a lot of gains.
And I know that practically, the nation has been known for the truth, regardless of where you go. The truth sticks to the nation. You will go around, but you still come to nation because you know there's some authenticity, there's some credibility that comes to the name. So I understand that. I had to pitch in. My boss is watching.
What I wanted to say
but it's the truth.
Yes, yeah, it is the truth.
Yes.
What I wanted to say was the exposure that the young journalists also receive is very important, because when you're starting out, you might think that you wanted to do probably broadcast, but you get in there and you discover this is not my thing. So the exposure that you need, as opposed to being employed and assigned to a specific desk and beat, and just a general exposure to all things, it would be very helpful, so that the reporter can identify, or the journalist can identify their interest. And this idea of being promoted, you can be promoted along the same line. It doesn't have to be from reporter to editor to director. You can be reporter, and moving on like that, And that's where you will get people doing what they like. Because in journalism, it's a whole issue of passion. If you don't have the passion, you're not going to give us anything.
Rose is very quiet.
I'm agreeing. I agree with everything.
I agree with it. All right, we have a few minutes on the clock. I'd like to give you an opportunity now to close for us. Sum it up, especially on this, because we're bound to see this recurring every single day, right? And it's happening in the newsrooms every single day. So how do we ensure that what we get outside there, and Press Pass is not only for Nation, it's for all media houses in the country, and they watch this. So let me begin from Rose, even as we close.
Well, I mean, let's just take up where Sylvia left off. I mean, I think quality quality sells itself. I think, like, we have had big conversations about fake news. I actually think fake news is the best thing that has happened for news, because people can now tell the difference and the value of having authentic, you know, curated, verified information, you know. I think there are shifts that have to take place in terms of the content that is being covered and how it's being covered in the digital. You know, we're all going digital, yes. And in that digital space, things have to change in terms of brevity, language, you know, even content. You know, I mean, it's not the breaking story is not necessarily the way you want to go, but then we're not having the conversations that we need to have about what is the way that we should go. What will people pay money for? Because essentially, the news business is a business first, and you have to identify what is of value that is being passed on. So I think it's very important to have those conversations live. I think nationally we haven't had those conversations really to identify what are the trends in content. There are papers, there are TV stations flourishing in this same digital environment that is killing so many TV stations and papers. Yeah. So it's a conversation that needs to take place so that we understand where we're going, not just trying things. Okay. You know, perhaps we need a little research to guide that process and guide and inform.
Okay, well said.
Yeah.
Sylvia.
So on my end, I think this is a wonderful conversation to have, especially in the context of what is happening right now. I want to say that the world has become different since the social media happened. It's a revolution, but this revolution is threatening to devour us. And if we are not careful, we might just really end up in a very bad place. So I want to say that recognizing that there are no boundaries now, the rules of the game have changed. We really need to think through how we're going to cope with this. As mainstream media, you guys need to be seriously thinking about really investing more in training. And I'm glad that I know the Nation and the Standard have very strong training programs, but you need to do more. The other mainstream journalist organizations need to do more. And the focus should really be on enabling the journalists that are working in these institutions to be able to cope and even override what is happening externally. My thing is that, yes, it is a wave, it's driving us, but we must not allow it to beat us. We must find a way of standing above the social media craze and being able still to be able to provide news that is based on very strong news values and that is telling the nation what they should be hearing.
Okay. Douglas.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think my closing comments would be that there's this shift, and that the pace at which the practicing environment, the environment in which we practice our journalism is shifting is much faster than we are able to adapt. So we must invest in that adaptation. And for me, the future lies in convergence, which has just been a discussion. And you visit mainstream media houses and not much is going on. I'd like to see investment in training. I'd like to see investment in quality. Let's see what we see in Nation print, on Nation television, on Nation online. And that means a lot of investment in training. And why don't we also go back to ensuring that the principles, the basic principles of journalism, because all these things about fake news can be beaten by just adhering to the basic principles of journalism, which just requires you to follow through using a few steps in verifying a story. How come it is very unfortunate that we can end up running stories about people we know nothing about? So let's stick to the basic principles of journalism. They will help us sort out this mess. And I think the future is bright. If the spaces move, we move with the spaces.
Okay, and finally, Joy.
From a training point of view, I think most universities and colleges are doing the best that they can. As you may be aware, besides the health sciences, journalism is the next most expensive course to train. So there are also issues of financing, because at the end of the day, you're getting the fee still remains the same, but it's very expensive. But are we doing the best that we can? Yes, we're doing the best, especially when it comes back to the basics of journalism. You have news values and news values. If it's in-depth training, it's in-depth. If it's in-depth reporting, it is in-depth reporting. Are we training this? Of course we're training this. But we also have a unique brand of learners, so to say, who are the instant generation, for lack of a better word. You know, they just want it today, if not yesterday.
Today and today.
So it's interesting. It's an interesting space, but I can assure you that there are conversations happening. I'm a proponent of the CBC. It's giving us ideas of what to do. We're already looking at RIARA, we are looking at the future of education, the learners that we have today. We want the students to tell us, what do you guys want, as opposed to us dictating a curriculum to them. So we take all this in, and we have very meaningful discussions with them, and it helps. When you see a student saying after, well, second year, now I think, because we don't ask them to specialize, it gets to a point like, let's say we are doing now, let's say investigative reporting. It's the learner to decide, are they doing their piece for radio? Are they doing their piece for social media? Are they doing their piece for TV? Or are they doing it for print? Because it's their own interest, it's their own initiative, as opposed to saying and dictating, all of you have got to write one story, you know, 500 words. So it's important to interest them. But yes, there are gaps, but the gaps are being addressed.
Okay.
Yes.
Well said, and thank you very much. Before I say my goodbyes, trending at number 5 tonight is Peter Tabichi, and this is the reason why it's trending before we go to the international radar. I just picked this up. This is a tweet from Stephanie Grisham, who is the press secretary for President Trump, right?
Yes.
So it says, this morning President Trump met with Peter Tabichi, the recipient of the 2019 Global Teachers Prize. Peter is a science teacher who gives away 80% of his monthly income to help the poor in his home country, Kenya. All right, I'm trying to get it up as soon as we have it. But I just want you to comment. It's not tweeted by Trump. Should have done some good, but it was tweeted by Stephanie Grisham, and he was here right after he came from UAE after winning this prize. Just an encouragement, what's happening, because this also puts us to the world. Just briefly, yes.
No, it's a very good thing, and the fact that he does that, it's very unique. That is a unique person who can do that. It's not most of us who would give 80% of our earnings to community building, but it's a very good thing. And also putting us on the global space, it's good. And that he's a teacher, you know, that's important, because it gives a very good space for us teachers. We feel very proud when we get associated with him. Yeah.
Okay, Douglas.
I think there was excitement when Tabichi came back home with that global prize. But my comment is basically a question. I wonder who he met.
You wonder who he met?
Yes.
Okay. Well, all right.
Now that we are talking about meeting with President Trump, I wonder who he met here.
Here. He met everyone, including the president. He did.
So that means we are beginning to recognize our own heroes at home.
Okay.
A good thing.
All right, my computer unfortunately cannot reflect it on the screen.
Yeah,
but
my thing about this teacher is that he has actually proved that in your own small way you can make a difference, and I hope that Kenyans are learning and picking up from him. But my hope and prayer is that it won't be a one-time story and then forgotten about. So let's see if the journalists around the table can take the challenge and keep this story about this wonderful teacher on air for some time.
Okay. And finally, Rose.
It's always lovely to hear these stories of Kenyans who excel. I think it always reminds me that there are excellent people in the country. I don't know that we do enough to ferret them out and to profile them at home, because we're consumed by problems and and you know, deaths and all these scandals and, you know, influencers. But I think it's really nice that when we do read those kind of stories, it reminds us of our potential as a nation, actually.
Okay.
And there's so many coming from so many fields, and just well done to him.
All right, let's do the final part of Press Post tonight. And this is something we read about a year ago, and it was also very important for journalists. And almost a year after the gruesome murder of Jamal Khashoggi, rings a bell now. Renowned journalist, audio recordings of the horrifying conversation between the 15-man Saudi hit squad and the victim, Jamal Khashoggi, has been revealed to the public for the first time by Turkish daily Sabah. The newspaper says Jamal Khashoggi told his killers not to cover his mouth. In the detailed recording, which reportedly captured the final moments of the murder, Saudi journalists, the pro-government Sabah newspaper says the transcript is from a recording taken inside and later obtained by Turkish intelligence. It includes information such as the journalist's alleged last words. The Sabah has consistently made international headlines by carrying details, including some that have been disputed, about the journalist's mysterious death. The newspaper published 2 new reports this week into Khashoggi's death at the hands of the group they labeled a hit squad. On its part, the Turkish officials have publicly confirmed the existence of those records, and say they have shared them with the international governments, but it's unclear how the newspaper apparently obtained them almost a year on from his death. Khashoggi's body has been recovered despite has not been recovered despite international pressure. I think this goes to the core of what we were talking about: investigations, follow-up, and all. And Sabah has been consistent. Yes. Yes, kabisa. Thank you, ladies, and the only 2 gentlemen in the panel tonight. Actually, 1 gentleman. Thanks for coming, and thanks for sharing your perspective. And of course, thank you for watching Presspass, and for your comments. We've been scrolling them. We'll not be able to read them because we're out of time, but thank you for watching. I'll be back tomorrow on Sidebar, exactly after the news. That's 10 p.m. Have a good night, and probably Mark will be back next week. If he's not back, I'll be right here. Good night.
I am Joseph Mungai Gikonyo, the proprietor of Garam Investments Auctioneers. I came to the Daily Nation because it was then, as it is till now, the newspaper with largest readership in the country. I didn't have to think twice about it. The Daily Nation is the cream of the crop. And I have seen tremendous growth in my business via the use of the Daily Nation.
Our leadership isn't challenged, and that's the truth. Daily Nation, the truth.
Go get the stove.
Ni kama haiko.
What?
Kapatia mtu wa marimare, akatu exchange na pegs.
My mini-me on his new bike. #goals, #child support.
Flying.
Walitoa tax au upate nimeng'oa mlango. Nikasafisha kila kitu kwa keja.
Sipaida wewe na kutambua.
I need more money for Liam's upkeep. That 50,000 is not enough.
Yes, season 4.